Welcome back to the Buckeye Battle Cry Show with Brandon Held. I'm a longtime diehard sports fan, especially the Ohio State Buckeyes. On today's show, we're going to talk about Week 2 highlights. Of course, we'll cover the Buckeyes versus Grambling. We'll talk about a discussion of the notable games and teams of the week. Last week, that is. I'll show you my top 10 for the first time, and it's very different than the AP poll top 10. This week's Legends in Scarlet and Gray, preview of next week's top 5 games, and my picks and winners. And then finally, my Instagram topic of the week to close out the show. So let's just start right off the top with Week 2 highlights. We'll start with the Ohio State Buckeyes and their game versus Grambling. Now, last week I predicted we would be about a 54-point favorite and the backups would be playing in the second half. Obviously, I didn't know they were going to play literally starting the third quarter, so that was a surprise. But we went into the game as 55.5 point favorites. If you're a betting man, that's not something I would bet on in a spread. We ended up winning 70-0. Week 2, no idea how the offense is going to show up and play. We know what the defense is capable of. I think the defense will be the most consistent part of the team. The offense is a little more up and down. So we'll see, but there's no doubt Julian Sand looked phenomenal, right? He broke the Ohio State record for starting a game with 18 of 18 passes, and then his 19th one got intercepted. So he didn't really throw an incompletion, but it's funny they say that like that's a good stat. No, I'd rather him be 18 of 19 with one incompletion than 18 of 19 with one interception. And so would he. I just think it's funny how they say none of his balls touch the ground, because that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you'll take a drop ball or an incomplete over an interception all day. But overall, Sane was accurate. He was precise in his decision making. He looks amazing. He looks like his ceiling is much better than Will Howard. And I loved Will Howard, but Will Howard was a little unpredictable. He did have bad games where he wasn't quite sharp and he wasn't making great decisions with the ball. And he ended up doing what he did in the playoff run, and we won. But he did have about, at least I would say, 4 games last season where he just didn't play well. And Sane just looks like a different level. All the props to Sane, 300 passing yards in the first half. Granted, it's Grambling. I don't want to overstate that the way the offense played in general was so amazing, because it was Grambling. You do have to block. You do have to throw to the right places and make the right decisions. You do have to catch the ball, all that. But the level of competition, clearly not what Ohio State will be playing throughout the Big Ten season. I will also say this: the first team running game still needs work. It was a bit lackluster. I know James Peoples is an amazing athlete, and I believe he's capable of great things, but I didn't see it against Grambling. It was pretty average, the running game, and that needs work. Period. It just does. Jeremiah Smith goes off. He has 2 touchdowns. He has a great game. No surprise there. I thought even if Grambling tried to double cover him, he would still do well, because he's just that much better of an athlete. But man, they just left him open sometimes, which is even more mind-blowing. Carnell Tate has a touchdown. 9 Buckeyes had a touchdown. Jeremiah Smith was the only Buckeye with more than 1 touchdown. So that was great. Second half, they go in 35-0 first half. So second half, Ryan Day decides to let the backups play. Bo Jackson looked great. He had over 100 rushing yards on 9 carries. I definitely thought he deserved, based off of his performance in practice and spring ball, to get on the field and show what he's capable of, even in key moments with the first team. I don't know what he can do as a punt returner. I don't know if he's a great catcher of the ball from punts because that does take a special skill. That's not easy to do. If you've never tried it, you don't really understand that ball coming down from such a high height, possibly looking into the sun, the wind blowing it around, the judgment of all that. That's not easy to do. But if Bo Jackson can field punts, I would love to see him get some punt returns in meaningful minutes. Lincoln looked good, but he's definitely no saying. If we had to go with Lincoln this year, he would have been viable, would have been still a competitive team that possibly could fight for the Big Ten and the playoff run national championship. But saying is just a level better. He's just better. And I think they gave Lincoln a shot out of respect for being an Iron Buckeye and everything he did. But Sayin is just a better quarterback. He is. And that's no shot at Lincoln or anything. He's a Buckeye. I'm glad he's a Buckeye. Props to him for all his hard work and trying to get that starting role. But sometimes some people are just naturally better than you. And saying he's just QB1. He just is. Lincoln's very viable backup who, if for some reason Sayin went down, God forbid, and Lincoln came in, I still think we would be all right as a team. Now let's talk defense. The defense was downhill, aggressive, and I loved it, right? They gave up some yards because Grambling knew that that's the way they were going to play, so they were doing a lot of quick screens and short passes and dump offs to the running back. And that's the risk you take when you're aggressive, is leaving openings for yards to be given. But they were forcing turnovers. Caleb Downs had an amazing interception where he showed blitz at the line of scrimmage and backed out, and that quarterback flung that ball and he just stuck his hands up there and caught that. That is not an easy catch to make. He made it, and it was just one hell of an interception. So overall, team looked great. Next week, they have a home game against Ohio, who's actually undefeated, and they just beat a quality opponent. So it will not be as easy for Ohio State to play Ohio as it was Grambling, but I still expect a lopsided victory, and I'll get to that later. Now, the other games worth discussing, my picks last week. Overall, last week wasn't a great week for picks. I went 3-3. Week 2, still hard to know who's exactly what. And of course, it's college football. So even if you think you know what someone is, doesn't mean upsets don't happen and other teams don't show up more hungry and more ready to play. So upsets are always a possibility in college football. And I picked some upsets, but I also picked some, favorites to win. Didn't get it right. So let's talk about the first game, Illinois at Duke. I picked Illinois to win. And it was actually a tight game for a while. There was back and forth between Illinois at Duke. I was actually really impressed with Duke's offense, even a little bit their defense in the first half. I was impressed with just how hard they were playing. But Illinois is just too good. In the second half, they just pulled away, dominated, ended up beating them 45-19. And I think Illinois is underrated at number 12. I genuinely do. And they'll go up because I expect them to be a much higher rated team when they play Ohio State at home in a few weeks. Next game, I have Iowa at Iowa State. In my head, I thought Iowa State would probably win this game, but being a rivalry game and Iowa being a Big Ten team, I went with Iowa. I chose Iowa. And in the beginning, early, it looked like Iowa State was going to run away with this thing. But Iowa came back and made it a game and tied it at 13-13. And Iowa State had to kick a field goal at the very end of the game to win 16-13. So I got that wrong. I picked Iowa to win, even though my brain said Iowa State would likely win because they were at home. But I wanted to go with the Big Ten team, Iowa, and give them the chance to get the upset, but they didn't pull it off. Now, the next game, USF at Florida. Now, I had Florida on upset alert last week. The way USF looked against Boise, I knew they were going to be tough. I knew they were going to give Florida a hell of a game. All we had to go by with Florida was a cupcake team that they played in week 1. And that's the problem with playing these cupcake teams. You don't know what a team is actually made of. And so USF went in there and they got it done. They beat Florida. I picked Florida to win. I thought Florida was going to be better this year. I thought Lagway would be a notch higher. I thought their defense would be a little better. Not that their defense was bad yesterday, but they definitely choked. And the personal foul, I don't know if you saw the end of this game, but one of the defensive tackles spit in one of the South Florida players' faces. It gave him a personal foul. This was the last drive of the game for USF to try to go down because they were losing by 1 point at this point, 15-16. And then right after the personal foul and the first down, they pick up a huge play on like a screen pass where 3 people had a shot at the player and they just didn't wrap up and tackle and get him down, and he gained like 24 yards. Got USF down in field goal position and they just kept running the ball, and they got it all the way down to like the 3-yard line, and then it was a chip shot field goal at the end of the game to win by 2. As good a talent that I believe Florida has, their coach just isn't getting it done. He just isn't. And I see why Florida fans are so upset with him as their head coach, because you can't ever give someone that much credit as a coach at Florida for recruiting, because recruiting at Florida should be easy. Should be easy. There are certain schools where recruiting should just be easy. I mean, name it. It's a huge list, right? Ohio State, LSU, Scum, Florida, Oklahoma, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami, Alabama, Georgia, USC, Texas. I could go on. Those schools, you should be able to plug in any high quality coach, and that coach should be able to recruit very well at that school. Florida's no different, and he's just not getting it done as a coach. So big, huge win for USF. Their reward for beating Boise State last week and going and beating Florida at Florida is playing Miami next week. So let's see what they're made of. Next game, Boston College at Michigan State. So this game was an eye-opening game for me. I did pick Boston College to win this game. Why? Because I thought Michigan State was towards the bottom of the Big Ten, as I stated last week and in my Big Ten preview show. It took double overtime and Michigan State converted on a 2-point conversion and Boston College didn't. So Michigan State won 42-40. What surprised me about this game is just Michigan State's ability to score. Their open offense, the head coach is giving the quarterback Childs the opportunity to go win football games. And I appreciate and respect that. And Childs is getting it done. He's so much better as a quarterback than he was last year. It's not even close. He's like 2 different people. The head coach they brought in from Oregon State to take over at Michigan State, it does seem like he's turning the team around a little bit, especially offensively. I mean, defensively, they gave up 40 points. The defense obviously needs to get better. And if they're just in shootouts all the time, they're definitely not going to win those. But they won this one and proved me wrong. So Michigan State at home beat Boston College, and I will have to take them a little more seriously going forward. Now, the only ranked game of the weekend of 2 ranked teams, Scum at Oklahoma. And I have so much to say about this game. As a Scum hater, I did pick Oklahoma to win this game. It's a primetime game at Oklahoma. And frankly, I thought Scum was overrated. You can't have a true freshman quarterback, I don't care how overhyped he is, who just turned 18 before the season started, and expect him to do things like go on the road and beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma. This is a much better team this year. Unless Oklahoma's one of the top teams in the SEC, Michigan, Scum, whatever you want to call them, just looked underwhelming. They looked handicapped. They look like all they can do is run the ball or try to run the ball. If they don't run the ball successfully, because their only touchdown in the game was a long run on a bad defensive play, they're still the same old scum. They can't pass the ball vertically and do anything downfield. So good win by Oklahoma. Again, I am not impressed with scum at all. At all. I don't think offensively they're anything to fear for anybody. If you can stop their run game and contain their quarterback, then you can beat them pretty easily. And I expect some other teams will. I don't think Oklahoma will be the last team to beat them this season. So a couple other games that I didn't predict, but they're noteworthy, is UCLA getting whipped pretty soundly by UNLV. That should never happen. They're at home. They're bringing in UNLV because that's supposed to be one of those teams that they should be able to handle, and it should be like a scrimmage or a practice, like everyone else does. And it wasn't. UCLA looks awful. Their quarterback, Nico Lame-Leava, he just isn't good, at least not at UCLA. Whatever happened between him and Tennessee, I hear different stories of what went down, whatever. He went to UCLA because of those reasons, and it is not working out. It's not working out for him, and it's not working out for UCLA. And I'm not saying it won't work out by the end of the season, but as of now, they look awful. And finally, in this segment, Clemson struggles to beat Troy. Now, Clemson already documented when they lost to LSU, they were so lackluster offensively that I was in shock, right? Joel Klatt said their receiving core was the third best receiving core in all the country. They couldn't run the ball against LSU. Now, I didn't watch the first half of this game. All I saw was it was the third quarter and Clemson was losing 16-0 or 16-3 maybe at home to Troy. And I was like, what? How is this even possible? And then I turn the game on to see what happens. And as soon as I turn it on, Clemson scores 2 touchdowns right away and takes the lead. So they came back and they took the lead. So I turned that channel and went back to whatever other game I was watching at the time. But regardless of that, the final score of 27-16 against Troy at home means Clemson isn't anything that everyone was hyping them up to be. I don't know if Dabo Swinney has lost it as a coach. I don't know if his assistants aren't getting the job done. I'm not sure what's happening at Clemson there, but right now, people should be sounding the alarm on them like everyone was last week against Alabama. And speaking of that real quick, Alabama looked like Alabama this Saturday. Yeah, they played Louisiana Monroe, but they still looked dominant. They looked like the Alabama of old. And I think we learned that Florida State is much better than anyone thought they were going to be. They threw up 72 points against their scrimmage opponent this week, but they also gave up, I think, 17 points or something like that. So FSU is a lot better than everyone thinks, and Alabama still looks great. So I think people should relax on Alabama, and you'll learn a lot about them this week against Wisconsin. And that's it for my overview of last week's games worth noting. Now it's time for my top 10 after week 2. The AP top 25, you can see here in this graphic, shows, not a lot of change, at least not in the top 10. Ohio State, number 1, Penn State 2, LSU 3, Oregon 4, Miami 5, Georgia 6, Texas 7, Notre Dame 8, Illinois 9, which is a change. They went up a few spots after that win against Duke. And FSU 10, which is also a change. They jumped up a few spots as well. So that's the top 10. You can read the rest of the top 25. But here's how mine is different. So Ohio State's number 1. They look like the best team in the country to me, one of the best teams in the country. And the defense, honestly, is the reason I think they look so tough and amazing, and the offense is TBD. So let's see what happens with the offense, but it has a lot of promise. But here's where I start to differ from the AP. At number 2, I have LSU for 2 reasons. One, they should be rewarded for going on the road and playing Clemson in week 1, and that's a huge win on paper because Clemson was number 4. I don't know if Clemson's going to be that good overall, but also Penn State, yeah, they won 34-0 against a Florida International team that should be a team they dominate, and they did not dominate. Penn State looked very average. Drew LR is not any better than he was last year. Accuracy wise, I picked Penn State to win the Big Ten, and I'm already nervous about that choice because Ohio State looks like a much better team. And so does my number 3. Number 3, I have Oregon, and they look much better than Penn State at this point. But granted, Oregon hasn't played anyone substantial yet. I don't know how good Oklahoma State's going to be, but they absolutely destroyed them Saturday. Oklahoma State's not an FCS opponent. That's a huge win by Oregon. They won, I believe, 69-3 was the final score. 69 is not surprising for the points they put up, but holding Oklahoma State to 3, there's something to be said for that. They definitely look like a better team than Penn State to this point. At number 4, I just move up 1 spot, Miami. They did beat Notre Dame, so they deserve a little credit for that win as well. Starting week 1 off with a tough opponent and pulling out the win. And then at 5, I put Penn State, and that's strictly out of expectation for what they should be this season because they haven't played anybody. And yeah, the AP has them at 2 for the same reasons I have them at 5. Because if I'm strictly going off who they play and the final score and their performance, I would probably drop them farther. But I expect them to be a better team this year, so I'm going to keep them at 5 for now. Coming in at number 6, Florida State, right? They handily beat Alabama, who on Saturday looked like the Alabama of old. So that actually gives Florida State, to me, more credit for their win for the first week of the season. I believe they put up 72 points in their game. Florida State looks legit. I get it. It's a low-level opponent, but still scoring 72 is doing a lot of things right. So Florida State, number 6. Number 7, I have Illinois. Big win against Duke. I don't know how great Duke is going to be this year, but 45-19 at Duke was a pretty solid win. It's a better win than Penn State has for sure. And I would be justified to put Illinois above Penn State, but I'm not going to do that just yet. But don't be surprised if I do that at some point in this season. Coming in at number 8, I have Tennessee. And the reason I have Tennessee is because even though they haven't really played anybody either, they look better in those playing nobody games. They scored 70-something points also, I believe, Saturday. And it's better than what Georgia did, but I just remember it was underwhelming, and I remember thinking they're definitely overrated at number 6 by the AP. At this point, it's probably for the same reasons Penn State's as high as they are, just expectations. They're expected to be better, so they're not really moving off of that based off of playing these low-level opponents that Georgia has played, but I am moving off of it, and I don't have Georgia even in my top 10. Coming in at number 9, I put Oklahoma. Why? Because they're 2-0, and they have a win versus a ranked team. Now, whether or not Scum deserved to be 15 and Oklahoma beat them, so at this point, that's a bigger win, and they deserve to be number 9. And then finally, number 10, Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a very good team. They lost a close, tight game to Miami at Miami week 1. I still think they're going to be a solid team that's going to do well this year. And so that's my top 10. Let me know what you think. Let me know your top 10. Let me know who is way off in your opinion or who you agree with and you think is spot on. I would love to hear that from you in the comments section. Hey, quick time out here. Please take a moment to just subscribe, comment, and like. If you do all three of those things, you'll really help me out in getting the word out for this show. Help me hopefully gain a larger audience. I would greatly appreciate it. So comment, like, and subscribe, please. And go Bucks. And now it's time for Legends in Scarlet and Gray. This week's legend in Scarlet and Gray, we're sticking to the offense, and I believe this is the third week in a row I'm doing offense, and it's going to be wide receiver David Boston. David Boston played from 1996 to 1998, and there are probably some younger generation Buckeye fans that don't really know much about David Boston because they didn't get to see him play. But at the time when he played, he was arguably the best wide receiver we had ever had, or one of the top wide receivers we had ever had at a minimum. So some of his statistics are he had 191 career receptions, 2,855 career receiving yards, 34 touchdowns. In a single season, he had 85 receptions in 1998. He had set the single season receiving yards at 1,435 in 1998, surpassing Terry Glenn, who I talked about 2 weeks ago, and he had the most 100-yard receiving games in a season at 8 in 1998, and in a career with 13. So some standout moments for David Boston if you didn't see these games and you don't know. He caught the game-winning touchdown in the 1997 Rose Bowl with just 19 seconds left from Joe Germain, winning over Arizona State. That was an exciting, fun, great game to watch with Jake the Snake Plummer at Arizona State. In 1998 Michigan game, scum game, he hauled in 10 receptions for 231 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he earned consecutive Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week honors. And to be able to average 23.1 yards a catch with 2 touchdowns against your arch rival scum, that's just an amazing performance as a wide receiver. And then the 1999 Sugar Bowl, where he finished his career, he was named the MVP with 11 catches for 105 yards. He was a first-team All-American in 1998. He was a 2-time first-team All-Big Ten in 97 and 98. And he also served as Ohio State's all-time leading punt returner with 98 returns for 959 yards. So David Boston, if you haven't seen him, go watch him play, YouTube him, look him up, see the games you can see about David Boston, because he was an amazing wide receiver. And that's this week's Legends in Scarlet and Gray. All right, now it's time for my week 3 predictions with my top 5 games of next week. I don't take the easy way out. I don't take the easy games. I take what I consider to be the best or toughest games of the week. And so last week I went 3-3. I already told you the games that I picked and the ones that I got wrong and the ones that I got right. Of course, I picked Ohio State, so that made me 3-3 plus the week before. So I'm 6-5 overall right now after 2 weeks with the toughest games and hardest games to predict, especially early in the season when you don't really know what teams are made of. But this week we have unranked Wisconsin playing Alabama at Alabama, and Alabama is 19 right now. Significant fall after their Florida State loss. And frankly, this is going to be a game that really shows you what Alabama is made of, because yes, Wisconsin is a Big Ten team, but by Big Ten standards, Wisconsin is not very good. They're struggling with identity. They barely beat a not very good team on Saturday that's supposed to be a scrimmage type team, and they struggled and they didn't do well and they barely beat them. Whereas Alabama routed their team, Louisiana Monroe. If Alabama doesn't handily beat Wisconsin this Saturday, then Alabama should be concerned. They should be concerned, and people should worry about if they are who they thought they were after week 1. But I expect Alabama to win this game at least by 3 touchdowns. I would say at least, if not more. So let's see what happens. Wisconsin at Alabama. I got Alabama. Next game, Clemson at Georgia Tech. Now, right now, Clemson is ranked 12th somehow. I don't know. They lost to LSU week 1. It's probably the close loss to LSU that's keeping them in the game. But now I question just how good is LSU. And we'll find that out this week as well. Clemson at Georgia Tech. And the way Clemson played last 2 weeks, their offense is not impressive. Their defense is good, but I honestly thought they would be better than they actually are. And so I'm taking Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's going to be up for this game. They're going to be upset-minded. It's at home. I believe they'll show up with a lot of heart and a lot of want to. And in college football, that matters. That matters a lot. It's not the NFL where, talent is kind of even across the board and people show up and play to their talent because they're professionals and that's what they get paid to do. In college football, heart and desire and want to is hugely important. And I think Georgia Tech is going to have that. And I'm picking the upset because I'm at the point where Clemson has to show me they are who they're supposed to be. Coming in at number 3, Georgia at Tennessee. Again, Georgia could be great this season, but how the hell do I know? They've played Marshall and some other random team. They looked good, but so what? Tennessee looked better against their random competition. And this game's at home against Tennessee. I want to go with Georgia just based off experience, and their coach and their team has been in big games. They know how to handle big games. They know how to win big games. But again, Tennessee at home, it's going to be a raucous, fired up crowd. I don't know. I just feel like Tennessee has shown me more at this point in the season than Georgia. So I'm going with Tennessee based off of that, but I'm telling you, won't be surprised if Georgia wins this game, but I'm just taking Tennessee at home in this case. And then the next game is Texas A&M at Notre Dame. Almost the same situations, really. Texas A&M is currently number 16. Notre Dame's number 8. Notre Dame's going to be at home. I think Texas A&M has looked a little not great at times against lesser competition. They can't do that against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense is too good, especially their linebackers and secondary. Their defensive line leaves a little bit to be desired. But I think Notre Dame's just a better team overall at this point, and I like Notre Dame to beat Texas A&M at home this week. The other games are Florida at LSU. I thought this was going to be a bigger game going into this game. I thought Florida would be undefeated, LSU would be undefeated. Boom, big game, toss-up game. But at this point, with Florida getting beat by South Florida at home last week, the obvious choice is LSU at home. Florida isn't as good as I thought they were going to be. And so I got LSU winning this game. Maybe Florida comes in and they're extra motivated after their loss to South Florida. Maybe LSU isn't as good as we think they are because Clemson isn't as good as we thought they were. So still a lot to learn in this young football season about these teams, but I'm taking LSU at this point. And then finally, as I do every week, we're going to take the Ohio at Ohio State game. Of course, I'm picking Ohio State to win. Again, I think people will be surprised at just how good Ohio is. But with Ohio State's defense, Ohio State should win this game pretty handily. I don't expect Ohio to put a lot of points on the board, but don't be surprised if they score more than Texas did. So I'm just saying that now. Ohio can play. They're not a bad football team. It will be, I think, maybe a better game than people expect early. Ohio State will obviously pull away, I think, and take a sizable lead and win the game handily. But I could see Ohio scoring 10, 13, 17 points. I could see that happening. So we'll see what happens, but definitely taking Ohio State. I don't know if it's cheating or cheap, but I picked all home teams in this situation. But genuinely, I feel like even on a neutral field, I would pick the home team in this situation. And then the fact that they're at home, well, that helps for sure. So we'll see how this week plays out with my picks. And hopefully I can get much higher up than 6-5. And finally, this week's Instagram topic of the week. Take a moment to watch this video. You see Dave Portnoy, Michigan scum fan that Fox hired for some reason to be a part of their pregame. I don't know if the scum kids were whining because, Urban Meyer's on the show and he's clearly, obviously, an Ohio State fan, as he should be, and they wanted balance to that Ohio State fandom. But I don't know why Fox chose this guy. I don't even know who this guy is. I never heard of him until Fox chose him, but I do know one thing. He's basically the Paul Feinbaum of the Big Ten. So, he just goes out there and he says dumb, ridiculous things. He already just has no football intelligence. And I don't know how these people get picked, but watch this video.
On a scale of 10, I'm like an 8. I think Bryce Underwood, I've sat with Urban, I've sat with all the quarterbacks. They're drooling about this guy, Bryce Underwood. They can't believe what they see on tape. He's like a supernova. I think he may be the single best freshman ever in college football. Wow. So I like Michigan tonight.
Okay, Coach. I was going to say.
So there you see it. He has Dave Portnoy has Bryce Underwood as the greatest true freshman of all time. If you saw the Scum versus Oklahoma game, you see that's clearly not true. Bryce Underwood was very underwhelming. He looked confused. He looked lost. He was missing basic passes. They hid behind the running game. They ran in obvious passing down situations. He just isn't that good yet. I'm not saying he won't be a very good quarterback because he very well could be. But Jeremiah Smith is 10 times better at his position as a true freshman than Bryce Underwood is. And for him to just say these dumb, ridiculous things just because he's getting paid and to get put on Fox, like, to me, that hurts Fox's reputation. When you put people on that say outlandish, ridiculous things that aren't backed up by the play on the field and what actually happens, they're going to turn into ESPN, who are a bunch of clowns that I don't listen to or believe anything they say. Definitely don't believe anything Paul Feinbaum has to say. And I don't believe anything this Dave Portnoy, nobody pulled off the streets into Fox, has to say. That's my Instagram topic of the week. Let me know what you think about Dave Portnoy and his ridiculous claims and why he even is on the Fox pregame. I don't get it. He wasn't even good at his little segment where he was riding in the car with the girls behind him and he was talking about the game and what he wanted to see, and he just kept repeating himself. You could tell he was nervous. You can tell he's in over his head, and it makes Fox look cheap and bad. So that's my Instagram topic of the week. And thanks for listening to the Buckeye Battle Cry Show. Make sure you follow me on YouTube. If you're not following, please take the time to like and comment and help me out with those things, because that allows the show to be pushed out by YouTube to other Buckeye fans, and I would greatly appreciate that. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see that I'm not doing. I'm open to ideas for segments in the show. I hope you enjoy what I'm doing so far, so I would like to know that as well. Until then, bleed scarlet and gray. Go Bucks.